Hello, this is Helen Lane, the Instructional Design Librarian at the FIT Library. And in this video, we're going to be taking a look at Mintel. Mintel is a market research and consumer insight database, and it's definitely one of those ones that I tell students, learn how to use this because you're going to be using it in your place of work once you graduate from college. So let's begin with, how do you get to Mintel? Beginning on the library's website, fitnyc.edu/library, all you need to do is click on Databases, and Mintel can be found in the A to Z list under M, or in the Databases category of Marketing, Media, and Demographics. Mintel does not require any special login. All you need to do is log in with your FIT username and password and agree to their terms of use. When you arrive at the Mintel site, what you see is basically a dashboard with the most recent and very relevant reports at the top. They usually have one across the banner that is most prominent. It's usually a very recent report that they think would be of interest to everybody. Now, what do we have from Mintel at FIT? Well, we have these reports that you're seeing here and the expert insights, and you can see that here with insights. And we also have analytics, and in the analytics category we have consumer data. In the workplace, depending on where you work, you may have many more services listed under those two top level services, but we have plenty here for you to get your homework done. Underneath the report that they're sort of promoting as their latest and greatest, you can see that there is a search box, and then next to the search box we have 5 different menus, 4 of which are standard and 1 of which is just for this pandemic that we're going through. Now, which one of these menus you go to first is going to depend on how your assignment has been presented to you. So you can definitely go in. I think the most common way oftentimes is to go in through a product category. So you're looking for information about, let's say, color cosmetics, or about retail and apparel. That's a fairly typical way of going in. But it might also be that you want to explore what is happening with people's values, or what a certain demographic or what a certain lifestyle, what people who fit into that lifestyle, what they are interested in buying and how they buy and what their opinions are about things. So category is very straightforward, and you see as soon as I hover over a category, a broad category that has an arrow next to it, you can see that there are also then subcategories, and color cosmetics is one of them. So that is definitely one way to drill down. And anytime you choose something here, you can then narrow it by the other menus after you've pulled up your first list. So a typical example might be going in with beauty and personal care, which would be selecting all of the subcategories. And then, because this does cover Europe and North America, and sometimes a smattering of reports from outside of Europe and North America, we can make sure that this is just the US, if that's what we're studying, and that has taken all of the European and other reports out of the picture. The demographic or trend driver, I'm going to come from the opposite end, skipping over COVID for the time being. So under demographics, you can see that you have categories that have to do with age, gender, income, and other broader ideas such as values and beliefs, lifestyles. These are also listed here. And under trend drivers, we have things that are more about And what are the drivers behind how people act, regardless of age or gender or supposed generation. So these are a little different, and these sort of are cross demographic categories. But you can see it's a very different way in than doing the category search. We'll take a look at a report in just a bit. I do want to talk a little bit about search, but we're going to do that after we look at one of the reports. So let's take a look at what's come back. Since we have not limited to a particular content type, what's come back is everything under the category of beauty and personal care, reports and insights and news updates and trend reports from North America. So just to show you how this works, if we go into the personal care consumer from in the United States, July 2020, what we're getting here is doesn't look like much at first, but it's a whole lot. So here is sort of an abstract of what this report covers. Then you have various downloadables, and these are really great, especially their infographic and their PowerPoint presentation, and the data book is also here. And in fact, there's a really great video from Mintel that explains the use of the interactive data book. There's also just the data book as a downloadable Excel spreadsheet. I'm going to put the link to the Mintel video in the description of this video. As you scroll down, what you're seeing here is different sections of basically what is a booklet on the personal care consumer. And these chapter headings are standard in every report. You're always going to see an overview, a market, consumer, branding company, and data. So you don't necessarily have to read the whole thing to get what you want out of it. If you know you're interested in the consumer profile, go in and get that. If you want to know more about how certain brands and companies are doing within the area, go for that. I do recommend that you always read the overview. It's good to read it all, to be honest, okay? And you can also search within this report right now. So once we click on one of these categories, for instance, if we go to market, you'll just have to then click again into the subchapters. So what you need to know is usually a pretty short subchapter in each one, but still very important. Every single one of these paragraphs can be exported, so that's something that's useful for doing a project. Make sure to always cite anything that you copy, paste, or export, in this case, for a paper. Now, instead of hitting the back button to go to the other sections, once we're in a section, all we need to do is go up to this drop-down menu, and we can see the other sections. Right? So we can jump to different sections. And this is longer and has more data. So you can also look at the content map. So this one is chapter by chapter, including all of these high-level categories. So we can go to the consumer, what you need to know, or we can go further out to those high subchapters by going to the content map. And I can jump ahead to brand and company if I want, and look at the key players and the overview here. So that's just how to navigate it. And you should also know, I suppose, that you could print it out and you can download this section as a document. You can also download the entire thing from back on the main page. Now, if we want to get back to our original search results, page of search results, everything from beauty and personal care, do not click go back to search, because this literally takes you back to the dashboard page. It starts you fresh all over again. So the only way really to do it well is to hit the back button, which is off my recording screen here, and you just sort of back your way out. So we're going to back our way out of here, and we should be back on the category region filter. and we are, okay? Region, category. So you can see there are some things that might not be completely intuitive. It's mainly intuitive. I want to talk a little bit before we wrap things up about a few more bells and whistles here. We can definitely limit by content type. So if we've read the main report on something and we just want the latest news, or we want to know when the next report is coming up, these categories are very useful. So back here on the main page, I now want to talk a little bit about search. And you may have wondered, why didn't I start with search? There's a good reason. When you start by drilling down through category or region or demographic or trend driver, what you find is whole reports, and that allows you then to search within that report for something very specific. If you just start with search, there are a couple things that are a little bit wonky about search in Mintel, and I will show you some examples. They're not necessarily the best searches, but they're good for examples. So if I put in a term, we were just looking at color cosmetics, like highlighter, okay? First of all, it's always going to look to see if there are suggested keywords. And if it doesn't, then it says go ahead and search highlighter. Now, I know this is not the best search in the world, but I'm using it to illustrate a point. So I'm thinking highlighter like the kind of cosmetic highlighter. I'm sure many of you are already seeing maybe what's wrong with the search, but I'm also using it to illustrate what's happening on Mintel. Yes, obviously the word highlighter is not just a cosmetics term, and we might have done better if we had added a term like makeup or cosmetics to the search. But what I really want to point out here is that it has automatically turned the search highlighter into an expanded search for all words with the same root. So we have highlighted here, right? And highlights and highlighting, okay? So that's not what we wanted. So if we do add a term like makeup, however, there's another problem that happens. So highlighter, makeup, that should narrow things down. Okay, we're going to run that search. And indeed, we're seeing cosmetics reports returning. And we can see that in some areas both terms appeared, okay? And it shows you. But in other places, we don't see where the term highlighter has returned, like this one. We may have to open the report to find it, okay? But here's another issue with search that I think is especially important for the beginning user. If this was your introduction to Mintel, and you click on this, for instance, this first result, you might not know that you are not looking at something singular. You're looking at something that's part of a much larger report. So you might take the approach that, as we do sometimes with Google, of looking at search result after search result and not then looking at the whole report that you've just tapped. So this is a single page, okay, a single subchapter from a really large report called Hispanics and Color Cosmetics, okay, including the impact of COVID. This is from July 2020. When you go in the other way, when you go in by category, by demographic, the first page you're taken to is the report summary page, which gives you an indication of everything that is part of this package. So that is my other issue with search. However, it's there, it works. Use it especially when you're having trouble finding something, but understand how it works and where it's going to land you in your search results. So that concludes my take on Mintel. And if you have any questions, please remember to use our Ask the Library service.